Today I'm going to show you some of the best gear in Hypixel Skyblock, including this full Necron set along with this amazing giant sword, but I've got options for all of the stages of the game, so if you could hit that subscribe button and we'll get straight into it. But yeah, let's start on early game. So my recommendation is you start with some sort of dragon armour, like strong dragon armour. Now the reason I suggest strong is because it gives a buff to the aspect at the end, which is a decent weapon for early game, but you could go for something like unstable, which is also a decent one for damage, as well as I'd start off with Ender Armor before you get the combat level to get something like this, but it will provide you some very decent stats to start with, and it also buffs the instant transmission, which is very, very nice. But yeah, moving to the aspect of the end, which is what that's going to be increasing the stuff of. So aspect of the end does 100 damage, 100 strength, and some decent stats on the crit damage and crit chance after you put a reforge on there. Now you can get also a warped reforge, but that's going to be much later down the line, but that will buff it and make it insane, so it can do upwards of 50,000 damage or something like that. But for now, if you have pair these two, it can definitely one-hit zealots for you, which is a very decent thing to get started with. Now, another option for weapons is going to be the I can't see looking at Raider's Axe. Here we go. Damage 90, 150 strength, decent stats on the crit damage, very similar to the aspect of the end in my opinion, but you get some added bonuses. So 20 coins per monster kill if they're level 10 plus, which most mobs are, and plus 1 damage for 500 kills. So you get 5,000 kills, and I've got 5,000 kills, and that's a decent amount of extra damage, as well as plus 1 strength per 500 wood, which is quite easy to get to max. And you'll have yourself a very good weapon, I feel like, to start off with. That's a decent starting option, and this whole set should get you at least to one-hitting zealots and that sort of thing. Now, in terms of speed and any extra damage, that will come from talismans or a god potion. Now, that's very necessary to do it. The other things you could do, I suppose, are just it's just grinding talismans and stats until you can definitely one-hit them. But onto the mid game, we've got some decent options here. I think we've got the Shadow Assassin Shadow Assassin set. Now this thing is pretty decent. It's actually only the helmet that's the thing, but helmet is very decent. The whole set together will give you some good bonuses of the Shadow Assassin, and it gives you better buffs to teleporting, which will help your aspect of the end. But that's a very decent set. Now this will require some dungeons to be done. Now before that, I'd suggest you get some sort of early dungeon set, like a rotten zombie or some sort of early set like that you can get from in dungeons that is very cheap to buy on the AH. Now to pair with that, there's another good weapon here. This actually went up increasingly in price very recently, so it's gone up to around 800,000 coins, which is why I put it in mid game, not early game, because this thing is very, very good. Now it can do a ton of damage. Based on every 100 kills with this sword, you get plus 1 weapon damage, up to 100 extra. So that's very decent. If you get 1,000 kills, I believe that is 10 damage, and then 10,000 damage is 100 damage. So that's very decent. Dungeon healer bonuses increase if you want to be healer. This is very good as well. Increases your healing from healing circle by 10% and reduces the cooldown of your wish. So that's very decent. Along with the amazing stats, it gives 190 damage, 142 strength, along with the reforge. That is very, very decent. And pair it with some good enchants, and you've got a good sword, and it's epic as well. So that's slightly better than some of the earlier options, which is why I put it up here. I believe it will cost you around 800,000 coins to get, which is definitely a steep price for early game, but I think it can just about fit into mid game. So next one I want to talk about is the Liver Dagger. This will also require some dungeons to be played, but it's very, very good. I think this is definitely your solid mid game option before you move on to anything higher. It's going to have 230 damage on base, or plus 20 for hot potato books, and a ton of crit damage and crit chance, which is awesome. And the bonus 100 attack speed is actually awesome. So that gives you basically double the damage essentially, because you can hit twice as fast, which is really, really awesome. And give it a crystal, what they call gem, and they'll give it some extra damage and all of that sort of thing. Your critical hits do 100% more damage if you're behind your target. So if you try and get behind mobs, you'll do tons more damage with this thing. If you want a slightly lower option than this, in between these two, you have got the Aspect of the Dragons, which is a very decent, just straight damage with no dungeons required. 245 damage, 120 strength. This will do slightly less damage than the Liver Dagger, but it also does half as fast, so it's very much cheaper than that. So yeah, that's a decent option again. Then onto this one, it's going to be the full Necron set. Now, I would suggest you don't use this unless you're in dungeons doing floor 7s, but you would use a Necron helmet, obviously. That'll give you a very, very good set with the Witherborn bonus and also good reforges. Now, I didn't mention this for this one, but most of this should be on Ancient, simply because I think Ancient is the best one because it gives you crit damage per Catacombs level. So, say your Catacombs 30, you get 30 crit damage for each piece, which is very, very awesome. And you can even reforge the Necron head. You can get a diamond Necron head as well, but that's very expensive. But I suggest you go for the Necron helmet if you don't have anything else. Now, there's obviously other sets you could use. These are all basically the same sort of thing. They're all some sort of Witherborn thing. So you've got Goldor, you've got Storm, you've got a bunch of other ones, but those are all pretty good. I think Necron is a decent one to start with because it's very all round, and Storm isn't quite. Is only good for Mage, really, I'd say. So yeah. Onto weapons for endgame. This is a bit difficult because I can't afford most of them, but I do have myself a giant sword, which actually went up a lot in price recently. But you can get this thing for, I don't know how much it is now, but it was around 200 million coins, which is very, very. It's a steep amount, but it does a ton of damage. It does over like 200,000 damage outside of dungeons, and it can do a lot more than that if you have better talismans than me. But in dungeons, it can do up to 3 million damage or even higher. Which is very, very awesome. Now, other weapons you can use for late game, it's going to be a bit difficult because most of these are going to be too expensive for most people, but if you really do want to look into this, it's going to be one of your Wither swords. So Hyperion, these are always obviously very expensive. This is the lowest price for one is 845 million with no enchants. But yeah, the Suspicious Hyperion here, that is going to cost you 880 million coins simply because the Necron's handle is ridiculously expensive. But the main thing with this is with the impact, this will allow you to clear tons of rooms and dungeons very easily. But other options include the Valkyrie. I'll just put Valk. Is that not how you spell it? No, that's not how you spell it. But this sword is very good if you're more of a melee thing. I feel like it does 324 damage base and 219 as well, which is very, very decent. It does plus 50% damage to withers as well, which is very decent. I think that's all. Is that all with the swords maybe? But yeah, I think it's more of a melee sword. So yeah, that's very decent if you want to do some damage. But yeah, those are basically all of the gear you should be going for. I will do specific videos on classes for each dungeon class if you guys want to see that. But yeah, that's very, very awesome. If you could hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications if you want to see more of my videos. But that's going to do it for today. So if you did enjoy, well, goodbye.